the original thing, of course, I've said this before, is people were surprised that you and I were friends.
Okay.
They didn't have a problem with us coming in to produce a broadcast, but when they realized that we were friends and we would lean on each other for information, or we would suggest something to one another
Yeah.
and just go forward with it, they were so impressed. And they would, when you left to get in your car and go and come back to the church, and of course I used to go back to my office, but they would say, "Is that man really your pastor? Is he really your friend?" And I think that was very significant to me, because there was also a manager in the studio that asked me the same question.
Right.
And she did it without any of the interns or students near her.
And what was the reason, in your opinion, what was the reason why they were so fascinated with asking questions about our friendship and things like that? What was going on?
Well, you talked about your Friday night walk around the church in the four directions, talking to people, and occasionally I did that with you, and I was able to
Did you accompany me on something?
yes, I did. I did accompany you on a few. And I would stop, and this was another thing, too. And people that I knew from my agency, the Department of Mental Health, would stop me and they would say, "What are you doing out on the street by yourself?" And I said, "I'm not by myself. I'm here with
This old man.
this." No, at the time you were not so gray.
Okay.
I said, "I'm here with Bruce Wall from the church," and I would name the church because it had a different name at that time.
Yeah.
And so I remember this guy said to me, "What do you mean you're with that guy? Why are you with that guy? He's black."
Right.
And I said, "Really?"
People just had a difficult time. But isn't that we're products of our city,
Right,
and they're also products of the city.
right.
And the racial divide back then, and to a degree now, with people living in separate communities, not fully integrated communities. You could tell where a majority of the black folk live. You can tell where who the people were in the North End. You can tell who the people were in South Boston. So, so people were used to being around their own,
Yes.
and so they question why you were walking the streets with this older gentleman who came from a different racial and ethnic background. And you kind of put them in their place in a very professional way without them even knowing that's what you were doing.
Right, right. Well, only because I wanted them to have a benefit from what I wanted them to know about our relationship, yours and mine. I wanted them to know that what they were looking at was really true, and what they were hearing from you and hearing from me was correct. And so, and that was how many years ago? How many years ago was it that we were going to that other studio?
That was, oh gosh. I mean, we started in the another studio downtown Boston in the transportation building.
Right.
So you're talking, what, 20-something years, easy?
I know. And here we are.
Time flies when you're getting older.
I know, but here we are, as you say, 20 years later, in our own church.
In our own church.
In our own studio
Right.
you have operated, opened it. You're sitting across from me, the distance of 6 feet, but you're also the engineer of this broadcast this morning.
You know, one of the things that is difficult is that when you and I went to the B&N studio, we would walk in, we would sit down and start to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty today for me is I can't even find the time to prepare for the number of broadcasts that I participate in because I'm dealing with technology, I'm dealing with engineering, I'm dealing with fixing this and fixing that, trying to get other people into the studios, getting their screens right, getting the color of their clothing right. So I'm like doing it all, and I don't even have the time now to focus on my own programming. Where before, I would just go and do a program in somebody else's studio.
Right.
I'd go, speak, and leave. But now I have to try to do that, but I'm doing everything else.
But I believe that you are responsible for everything around you. Everything that happens in this studio, you're responsible for.
Well, yeah, I feel the same way for the church.
Mm-hmm.
So with the equal time that I give to the station and to the studio, I give time to the church. I just transfer up to my office upstairs, and now I have the lights off down here, and I'm upstairs giving the same amount of time, if not more, trying to get things ready for what's happening in the church. Like we were just talking about a vaccination group of people from the, I believe it's Dimmick Health Center. It might be, I think it's Dimmick. They're the ones who are coming in. They want to use our facility. So they're bringing their doctors and nurses and attendants here.
That's good.
On a Saturday in this month, and they're going to be giving people, I believe it's the booster shots. They just want us to be here, provide security, register people, pass out flyers so that people know it's going on. So so this is taking, as soon as I'm through with this broadcast, I need to get back to the planning of that. We were also talking about the renovation of the church and the money, close to $3,000 that we've been given, and so I've got to stay in contact with the architect, and we got to talk to different contractors. So we're going to have a lot of work going on in the church in September.
Well, this is actually an old building.
A very old building.
Yes, and it's in good shape, and we've been taking care of it, and it has continually operated as a church. And I think that that's important because we have our hands on it in some way. Now, I'm only here a couple of days a week. You're here every day of the week.
Yeah.
I know you're here every day of the week. And you're busy. You're helping people coming in who want to broadcast as I do. You're helping people who want to learn about the broadcasting, to make an arrangement to pay for some time. There are all kinds of things that you're doing with people in addition to your own broadcasting.
And the other thing is, neither you or I are going to be here forever because we are getting older, and we're at the place and time in our lives where a lot of people are reflecting on the work that they've done over their years.
Right.
And I'm doing that. People are making decisions to retire, to stop working, and I'm in that process. You made your decision years ago to retire. How many years ago? How long have you been a retiree?
Well, let's see. How long has Charlie been the governor of the Commonwealth?
This is his last year, so it's 8 years. 4 and
Okay.
4, right?
Okay, so it was 8 years ago that I retired from working for the Department of Mental Health, which I had worked for 50 years.
That's a long time.
Yes.
And so for you, how has retirement been for you?
Well, it hasn't really been a
Yeah.
resting or vacation type of retirement.
Okay.
Because I have been involved with prison reform in the church. I have been involved with being the clerk and treasurer of the church, reporting to you, Pastor.
When I can catch you.
And I there, and I'm working with the bookkeeper to pass off things that I do to her so that I do fewer things while I'm here.
Right.
So there's all kinds of things going on, and it was really funny. I got an email from a friend 2 days ago while I was at home.
And
And it was from someone that was my friend 46 years ago.
wow.
And he was young. He was very young when I met him. And I was operating out of Medfield State Hospital. And he had just finished high school. I think he was going to college. But now he is a psychologist. He's a licensed psychologist, and he wants to come back and do his broadcast with me again.
Wow. How long ago did he do a broadcast with you?
Oh, he did it, a few years. It was before the problem that we all had in this country.
I thought you were going to say that the friend called you and said, "Did you know that your pastor was black?" That's what I thought you were going to say.
Oh, no. He does know a lot about you, and he respects you a great deal.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
And he's Greek.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's good, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about today has to deal with me personally.
Uh-huh.
For example, we were talking about you retiring so many years ago, but although you've retired, you're still very busy. You could fill your plate just like that with things to do if you wanted to.
Well, in addition to the items that I mentioned about what I'm involved with here at the church, I'm also a member of the board at the condo association where I live.
Yeah.
So there are meetings that I attend. There are things I do with people periodically that need to be done to be then reported back to the board of trustees.
Right.
So I'm doing that.
And in addition to being a church treasurer here at the church and the church clerk, you also have a responsibility with your condo association.
Right.
Are you still managing the finances for the condo association?
No, I'm not, because it became too large for me to manage, and we ended up recruiting a person in our building who was able to manage much more because he's a CPA.
Yes, I think Renee will still be here.
And he really is able to manage a great deal of money in an account. I can help
Okay.
him
I'll
somewhat
let him know.
with it, but
Right, bye-bye.
he does the majority of work.
Well, I don't know. I just don't know how you do all that you do. You are extremely busy, and you are an example for me and that's why my family wants me to get away from you, because what happens is that you being my example means that I stay busy. My wife was making a comment the other day. She said, because I get up at some mornings I'm up at 4 or 4:30 because I need to get out of the house if I want to get here on time. If I was just pastoring, I would not be up that early. I'd be coming in at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't be trying to get here so early. And it's funny, by the time 12 o'clock rolls around, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I've worked close to 8 hours. And if I stay here any longer, then I'm on overtime. And being the age that I am, at a certain time during the day, it's called nappy time. I don't know if you... this is so funny. I have a radio show on Tuesdays, and it's called The Three Young Men.
Right.
And it's Pastor Stephen Davis, Pastor Randy Neighbors, and myself. We're all seniors.
Yes.
And we call ourselves Three Young Men. And all we talk about is retirement. We talk about our wives. We talk about our dogs. We talk about the church. But we just have casual conversation. But it's listening to three old men who are calling themselves three young men. And you and I, we ought to, you need to transition out of mental health in your neighborhood, which is the name of this broadcast, and we need to call it two old people. It's like we're sitting in the park, right? We're sitting in the park, and we're just having conversations. Now, some people might find the conversation boring, saying, you know, all they do is talk about their false teeth and getting their hair done. But quite frankly, when I go to the Denham Health Center, that health center has more seniors spending their entire day there, playing tennis, exercising, but they're all seniors, you know.
Right.
And so we do have our own world, we do have our own lives, and we do have our own particular conversations, which young people should listen to, because they will learn. They ought to look at us and say, Loiuse and Pastor Wall have something to offer us, because they've made it past 16 and 17 and 18 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50. A lot of younger folk look at us and they want to know how they can live their lives in such a way that they have a future.
Right. And there's just so much that you can share with younger people that you have done all your life. It's really interesting, and I agree with you. I do agree with you. And I know sometimes my children, my adult children who are grandparents will ask me, are you still going to the church to do that? Are you still a trustee at the board? How can you do that? And I said, well, if you remember, your father and I physically built the house that you grew up in.
Yeah.
And I used to climb the ladder, and I used to put shingles on the roof. I can't do that now.
Right.
I wouldn't even think of doing it now. There are very few things I can do physically, but educationally and emotionally, I can do a lot more.
Right.
And I want to hold on to what I can do and share it in the two locations that I am in.
Don't you? I value the time that I can get with my children. Because they're in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And I think I had mentioned Sunday from the pulpit that I now have my monthly meetings with my children who do not live in my home.
Right.
One does, two do not. So I'm trying to go to dinner with each of them separately and have conversation with them. And I don't want them ever to feel like, oh, it's dinner time with Dad. What does he have on his agenda this time? And it was really funny. I didn't bring an agenda when I had dinner with my daughter 2 weeks ago. I thought it would be more casual, and I felt that I've done this long enough that I can create the agenda in my mind while
Right.
we're sitting down, and while the food is coming to the table, I can begin to share it. And I said to my daughter, I don't have an agenda for this meeting. She says, okay, but I do. And I said, "Oh my gosh!" So, but it was a great time. We both were falling asleep because it was so late when we went out. But it was a great time because you want to give your children as much as you can while you have the capacity to give it.
I know, but what I think is important is that we're sharing with our adult children
Yeah.
something that we have learned to do as adults.
Right.
And we're not talking down to them
Right.
as though they were small children.
But some parents, when they're engaging their children, it's usually either reprimanding them, having
Right.
negative things to say
Right.
about them, and it's really it's really troubling to see some of those relationships. And I never want my relationship with my children or grandchildren, when that happens, to mirror many of the people whose relationships are all toxic when families come together. You know.
I know it's very interesting because I have grandchildren and great grandchildren, and and unfortunately, one is in Oregon, one is in New Mexico, two are in Florida, but the others are here in the Commonwealth. They're in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
but sometimes when I am visiting with the entire family, the little ones will come to me and they'll say, "Nani, you better tell Mommy about what she should say to me instead of what she just said to me."
Oh. So they're looking to you to be an asset and help in communicating to their parents.
Yes,
That's very interesting.
That is interesting. I was rather shocked by it.
Well, you know, again, this broadcast is called Mental Health in Your Neighborhood. Because of confidential reasons, I can't share a story about what Renee and I both experienced yesterday here at the church. But suffice it to say that people are coming into the church with a lot of concerns. That they're calling us and they want to come and see us.
Right.
And we're going to have to utilize some of your expertise. Someone's ringing the phone, so you're going to have to talk while I find out who it is.
Okay. All right. Well, it would be very interesting to offer someone an opportunity to come and have a conversation with us about what their problem is, because a large number of people, including very young people, are having difficulty with their mental illness. And I know that the title of my broadcast, Mental Health in Your Neighborhood, might imply that it has to do with people who are outside the broadcast, but it really has to do with all of us, including you and me.
Right. And Renee and I have experienced, because we're both here, people are calling the church
Right,
looking for help. All kinds of help.
right.
They're looking for homes, housing. They're looking for jobs.
Right.
They're looking for emotional support. And they come in broken. And one of the things that Renee and I have said is that if there's only one of us here, we're not letting people come in. I had a gentleman. I was the only one here. This is how I learned this lesson. So I was here by myself, and the doorbell rang. There was a gentleman at the door who had on a suit and tie, and I thought it was maybe somebody delivering something to the church, or maybe somebody who wanted to talk about a product they wanted to sell to the church, because that happens all the time. And so what happened is that I buzzed the person in, and they came downstairs. And it was a black gentleman, again, suit and tie, impeccable. He said he was from New Hampshire. He was in the city. He was out of gas, and he couldn't get back to New Hampshire.
Oh.
And so he wanted the church to help him to get some gas so he can go. So in essence, he was asking for money.
Right.
So my thought was, I was feeling uneasy because I felt, again, I was the only one here. This person was much taller and bigger than I. The stature was bigger. I'm not a karate expert. I'm not a world heavyweight boxer, and I'm not a part of the wrestling federation.
Right.
So I knew that I needed to protect myself, because you never know what somebody might say that you did, because it's your word against theirs.
Right.
So I said the quickest way to get this gentleman out of the church, because he wasn't looking for emotional support, he wasn't looking for help with his family, he wanted money so he could buy gas. So I said to him, I will take you to the gas station down the street, and I will give you some gas. And so he followed me down the street. We went to the gas station. I put gas in his car, and he went on his merry way. But we have decided that will never happen again, because we're not going to allow people to come in when there's only one person here. But yesterday we had two people who really needed help. And Renee spent time with one, and I spent time with the other. And the question is asked all the time, how did you find us? Why did you come here?
Right.
And it wasn't because of my reputation as a preacher or as a pastor. It was a Google search. They actually conducted a Google search, at least the person who came to see me, and saw that the church was in the neighborhood, picked up the phone and called, and we answered. We could have that door revolving all day if Renee and I stayed on the phone.
Wow.
And again, people are emotionally.
But you're also a good team, Pastor.
Well,
you and Sister Renee are a good team.
But I'm going to tell you why we're a good team. She's wrestled in WrestleMania. She's a professional boxer. And let me see, wrestling, boxing, and Renee's a karate expert. So I feel protected when she's here.
Good.
But being very serious, people are in trouble, and
sure are.
And not being and again, with the food prices increasing, going to the supermarket,
right,
and looking at the prices, it's shocking, and it's enough to stress a lot of families out.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I went grocery shopping myself a few days ago, and I took one of those smaller baskets on wheels in the supermarket, and I filled the top.
Okay.
Everything in the top, and I paid for it, and it was $200.
Were you shocked?
I was standing there with my mouth wide open,
Right.
and the lady said, "Can you pay for this?" And I said, "I can pay for this, but I didn't expect it to be this high."
Right.
I'm just shocked.
Right. And here's a way, when you go to the supermarket, and for those who are watching, you don't have to pay me for this tip. When I go to Star Market or Roach Brothers, I love Roach Brothers, by the way, in West Roxbury. But if I go to Star Market now is manufacturing and creating their own products.
Right.
And they're putting their products right next to the other products with the brand names. And the price difference can be $1, could be $1.50. But I am always purchasing the brand name for the store. Now, maybe one day their prices will be up competitive with everybody else, but that at least is saving me a lot of money by purchasing, because the product looks the same, it tastes the same. It very seldom have I purchased the store's products and said to myself, I will never do that again. Usually it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
I want you to do that the next time you go shopping.
Okay, but I tend to use a market in the town I live in.
Okay.
Because I want them to know that I am using the stores
In the neighborhood.
and
in
the
area.
and the businesses in my own neighborhood.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
but if that's going to cost you an excessive amount, I was also looking at prescriptions the other day,
Ah,
and I walked in, and the lady said the same thing to me. I think my prescriptions. Sometimes if I go in and they say $7, I say yes, yes, or if they say $5, I say yes, yes. My insurance kicked in. But the other day when I went in, they gave me it was maybe 4 prescriptions,
uh-huh.
and Karen is always saying to me, "Can you pick up my prescriptions?" And I go.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went in, I picked up my prescriptions, and they were over $200, which is very unusual for that
Yes.
amount of money for
Yes.
prescriptions. And I said, "What am I going to do when I retire and I do not have the money coming in that I have now?" So the reason why they were a little over $200 is because some of my prescriptions are for 3 months.
Ah,
So, and she said, "Can you pay for this?" And I put my hands on my hip and I said, "Can you pay for it?" but again, things are changing. People, I heard many news stories about gas prices
mm-hmm.
and about how gas prices are going up. Now, can you tell the audience why you're never concerned about gas prices?
Well, partly because I don't drive long distances, but the more important part is that I have a Prius, and I get my Prius produces 57 gallons as I drive.
Right. So you're 57 gallons per mile
Yes.
that you consume. So I have a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
We both have hybrids. Mine is also a Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is 31 miles to the gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Yours does better. The
Right.
Prius does better. I have been looking at the electric cars, but I looked at the Tesla, and it's a little out of my league financially. I don't want to put that kind of money into an automobile.
Right.
But they have all types of electric cars, and pretty soon I'm going to be transitioning to an electric car. I also, Loiuse, I have an electric bike, and I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I do know that.
Right, and my electric bike, they say, will travel 120 miles on one charge, and that's I could go out to ride my bike to where you live and back, and still have enough energy to enjoy myself.
Well, I hope that would be safe, because there are a number of people on bicycles who have been bumped into by people driving automobiles. So one has to be careful about that. But I also think that you have the advantage of being able to use your electric bike from where you live to the church here.
Right, and the other thing that the city is doing, there are people in the city who appreciate what they're doing, but there are others who are very, very upset with the city, and that's called the bike lanes.
Ah,
And so there are bike lanes, let's say, on American Legion Highway, which in American Legion Highway is a well-traveled road. So when you put a bike lane there, and the lanes go down from 2 to 1, and for example, there's a car wash on American Legion Highway. So when you're driving down in the first lane, it's backed up about a mile or so, and you wonder what is going on. And as you go to the second lane, you find out all those people are waiting to go into the car wash. They
Right.
used to go to the extreme right and not block the traffic, but now the extreme right is the bike lane. And to be honest with you, being a biker and a person who loves the bike lanes, there's nobody in them. So
Right.
as I'm driving my car and I'm looking at the bike, I always look at the bike lanes. There's there's nobody in there. Then the newest thing that the city has done, that they have put the buses now on Columbus Avenue are in the middle of the highway. So on the right hand side or the left hand side, it used to be a 2 lane. Now it's a 1 lane going one way, 1 lane going the other way, and the buses are in the middle. The buses only have to stop for the lights because there's nobody else in the bus lane. I think that's a fabulous idea for people who want to ride the bus, that they're going to be arriving at their destination much quicker because it's only the red light that they have to stop for.
Wow.
The rest of us, though, now have 1 lane where there used to be 2 lanes, and things are backed up. So people are upset with the bikers. They're upset with the city and the bike lanes. I don't know where this is going to end, but around the country, cities are building bike lanes because many people are saying we don't want to own a car, and we want to live in a city where you can either utilize public transportation or you can use a bike, a motorized bike or something like that to help you go from point to point. And that's what Boston is becoming.
I know, because there was a conversation on the news recently about the probability that everyone was going to be encouraged to buy an electric car.
Yeah.
However, since I live at a condo
Yeah.
and I live on the 7th floor,
Yeah.
I can't plug my car in
Overnight.
because I'm on the 7th floor.
But if you take a
But
look
the
at
Prius works fine for me.
Right. But if you take a look at what is going to be happening, I believe eventually what's going to happen in a place like yours, the owners are going to end up putting in electric chargers in the basement because they're going to have clientele that have the electric cars. And if you want to have people want to purchase a condo in your facility, and that's happening. I used to think that some of these electric cars went 300 or 350 miles. So if you've got to go longer, you have to put in your planning that you're going to stop at a restaurant and eat for 2 or 3 hours, and there needs to be a charger next to that restaurant, and they're building them, Loiuse.
Ah, yes, that's true. That's
So
true.
again, we're
So
talking.
There's a lot going on.
We're talking mental health in your neighborhood, and all of these things that we're talking about this morning can impact your mental health. Not being able to pay for food, not being able to pay for gas. One of the other things that I would say in conclusion is I watch the news, I listen to it in my automobile. So when I get in my car, I plug and you can do this too, I plug my phone to my car.
Right.
The phone lights up the dashboard, and I can go to CNN or Fox News or the Weather Channel. I could tell my car to dial your number, and it will dial your number, and I can talk with you. So my car is all electrified, and I can say, find Boston Praise Radio and TV, so I can listen to Boston Praise Radio and TV in my car through my phone. All of this technology is helping people who have it and helping us to drive more safely and puts a smile on my face. But I've been listening to the news, and I've been very concerned about the United States and Russia and different things that we've been hearing about a possible invasion. So have you, driving in, did you listen to the news? Is there any update as to what's happening?
There was still some potential about the Russian using its invasion tactics.
Well, it was my understanding that there were about 331,000 troops that were on the border, and a number of them have been ordered to return back to their bases.
Mm-hmm.
And although the United States is still saying that the invasion is still a possibility, the
Mm-hmm.
United States has been very aggressive in saying there's going to be an invasion, and B, there will be a response if they do. And people have said that's a tactic that the United States is using. I don't understand it
Mm-hmm.
because people have been saying you are basically sounds like you're urging Russia to go ahead and invade, but it's a
Mm.
military tactic that they're using.
Right. Yeah, it's all a little over my head, actually. But I think that what's important about everything you just have reported is how much detail you know about uh, different activities that you have adjusted your life to be able to provide assistance for.
Well, a lot of the technology that I am using right now, I'm using the technology to assist other people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to teach other people how to use this technology, how it can work for them and for their families. And again, right now looking at some of the news stories, we're utilizing the radio station to bring news to people who may
Right.
not be listening to it on other
Right.
stations because many people are saying it's too overwhelming to listen to these news stories. It just emotionally
Yeah.
for some of them it brings them down.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to be able to share the news in such a way that it doesn't overwhelm people, but it does inform them
Mm-hmm.
and it helps them to prepare for what they need to do to be ready for a storm or a military issue
Mm-hmm.
or something that might be happening. For example, Michelle Wu, the mayor, to have people going to her home and protesting outside of her house, scaring her children, and causing the neighbors to really be upset. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so we want to be able to tell these stories in such a way that people will understand them, but not be overwhelmed by them.
Right. Right. So what you're trying to do is to encourage people to learn how to take care of themselves more safely
Yeah.
and to keep their mental health
Yep.
in a good position.
Right. Well, when I think about the Ukraine and I think about Russia
Mm-hmm.
and I think about the United States and I think about other Germany and other countries that I at my age during we're just dealing with this still dealing with this pandemic
Mm-hmm.
to see a war between the Ukrainians and the Russians and then seeing all these other countries wanting to provide aid to the Ukraine, you talk about mental health in your neighborhood. It's going to cause a lot of people a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
and a lot of people could lose their lives. So I'm concerned about it, and I want to stay focused on it and give as much information to the people who are listening to us. Because my question is when black folk think about going to war, joining the armed services,
Mm-hmm.
they go because they want to do something for their country,
Right.
and they want to do something to help those who appear to be the underdogs.
Right.
But the problem is that when black folk go into the service and they give 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then they come back home to their country, and they're treated worse than the people that they were defending over in other countries,
Yes.
that creates a serious problem.
Yes. That's to me. That's a great embarrassment to people who are acting against black people who have done so much for us.
Right. And so I don't know where we're going to be in the next couple of weeks. They're saying that the invasion of the Ukraine could be imminent. but I'm hoping that it doesn't happen.
Right.
I'm hoping that we can finish this journey with this pandemic and
Right.
come out of that. It's my understanding the governor has said that at the 28th of February, the state will not be having mask mandates. They're not going to be pushing that.
Right.
It's going to be reduced, but each city and town can make their own decision. And so as a church, once the city makes its decision, we can make our decision as to whether or not we're going to do anything to reduce the
Well, I
level
think
of
that
intensity.
that once we have that experience of the vaccination for one day in our church, that we might want to make a decision about that. That would be up to you.
Right. And we're hoping that a lot of the people that are coming in to be vaccinated are going to be people from the community who didn't feel that they had access to another place to have this done. Number one. Number two, there are some people who trust the church
Right.
and may feel more comfortable. I know a few people who said that if we have it here, that they would finally allow for the vaccination. So we're going to start promoting this and putting the word out and letting people know that this is happening at our church. And
Yeah, this location is very, very local for hundreds of people who live right around this neighborhood.
Right.
So that would be another issue. I think the medical clinic is probably encouraged by our location.
Right. I think people are encouraged by one location, B, the fact that we have a media outlet where we can communicate this information to the city
Right.
if we want to, and that the church has a halfway decent reputation in this area and in the entire city, and that maybe if we are having a vaccination seminar, that they're calling it a pop-up vaccination. So it just happens, and to have all the medical authorities come to the church and to share the information about the vaccination and to answer any questions that need to be answered so that people are willing to take it. I think we fit the bill. The key thing now is trying to get people here.
Well, I think so too, because I remember another time that I did a volunteer task in this building was when we cooked some food and gave away a large number of food to homeless people. And that was so many more people than we anticipated in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it worked out very, very well. And it was well worth doing.
The need is
Important.
there. There's no question the need is there. You have about 5 more minutes, so if you want to share anything else or say something to your listeners.
Well, I think what's important is that I want to encourage the listeners to know how much time and effort you put into talking about what's going on and talking about what can be done for correction. But I mean, if people are complaining about the excessive charges at the stores, they're impacting you and me as well. I mean, it isn't just the people who are listening; it's all of us. And my understanding is that eventually the cost is going to minimize. So I'm looking forward to that.
The cost for
Everything.
this.
Everything that has gone up in price, that it's then going to minimize.
Well, again, that's why I was saying every time something like this happens and a country or a city or the United States goes to war, it, everything goes up and stays
Right.
up
Right.
because it's hard to get these things.
Right.
The pandemic has had a major effect. It was really amazing. I didn't know this, but when I ordered my bike, it took my bike 6 months to come to my home.
Really.
I thought maybe it was a scam,
Mm.
and I had done business with the wrong entity until I started calling other bike companies, and they
Right.
were saying the same thing. The same thing with cars. My son, who sells automobiles, is saying that when you purchase a car now, in some places it's 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You're not driving out
Right.
unless it's a used car, but you're not driving out. So I went to the back lot of the dealership. There were no new cars in the back lots.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, there's a lot going on, and a lot of that could stress people out,
Mm-hmm.
especially people who are purchasing a car, and your old car is barely making it,
Mm-hmm.
and you come into the dealership with the car, and you're
Right.
hoping that you can get into a new one that same day, and they tell you 3 months from now.
I know.
That's tough.
It's amazing. It's just amazing. So you have to learn about the adjustment, and you have to learn how to handle the adjustment.
Yeah.
And that's also taking care of your mental health.
Well, Louise, you've been talking for quite a while now, and we're up against the clock, so the final music will be playing in a few moments, and I appreciate the fact that you invited me yet again. I just must be your favorite, so you invited me yet again to be with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do enjoy the conversation we have on my broadcast. Thank you very much, Pastor, for all you did to help today and all you did to share with others who were listening.
Thank you, Louise. We're
Okay.
transitioning out, and coming up next will be